There we go.
We're good to go, Mayor Jameson.
Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. I am going to call the regular meeting of council, October 19th, 2020 to order. You have before you a copy of tonight's agenda. We do have an addition. It would be under 9F, excused absence for Councillor Dowie. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Sorry, Mayor Jameson, that'll actually be 10D under new business.
Oh, sorry, right, D, not committee. Sorry. Looking for a motion? Councillor Anderson and Deputy Mayor, all in favor? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, guys. Item number 3, any declarations of interest? And I'm assuming that Councillor Grunewagen and Councillor Chambers are fine. Moving on to item number 4, announcements, awards, ceremonies, and presentations. Anything from council? Okay, nothing noted. Moving on to item number 5. I'd like to welcome Mrs. Erin Griffith and Councillor Willows, who will be going through the pandemic response presentation tonight and representing Hay River Health and Social Services. Thank you, guys, and passing it over to you.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
We sure can.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for the invitation tonight to talk about our pandemic plan. I understand you have a copy of the summary in your package, and the fulsome document you can find on our website and also the website of the Department of Health and Social Services Authority, Health and Social Services. So I'm not going to go into it in great depth tonight. I'm thinking that you've seen the document, and so I'm just going to highlight a few things, and then I want to hopefully have some time for some conversation or for some questions from everyone around the table. So with that said, I want to just back up a bit and just give you a bit of a history and some context around the development of this document. And so in March of this year, when we were rudely interrupted and introduced to COVID-19 here in the Northwest Territories, it was decided at that point in time, and a directive was given, that this document and our approach to COVID-19 in the NWT for health services and also social services would be a collaborative and a one system approach. So the 3 health authorities and the Department of Health and Social Services have worked together to develop this plan, and our approach since March has been as one system. So we're working very closely together. You'll see that in a lot of our advertising, a lot of our promotional efforts, a lot of our awareness. There's logos, joint logos between the health authorities. Sometimes there's just NTHSA logos in some of our awareness and some of our promotion, but rest assured that it is a one approach to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the document itself, it really focuses on our current state. It moves us from current state all the way through our worst case scenario. And this document has also been vetted and developed in partnership with our Chief Public Health Officer's office as well, Dr. Cami Candola, and assisting us with the pandemic response as well, because obviously she has a significant role in this as well. So like I said, I won't go through this page by page, but just do a few highlights and then open it up for questions. So first of all, I wanted to talk about caring for patients in the NWT. So this will range from people and clients that may have mild symptoms to moderate symptoms to severe symptoms. And so what we're anticipating with COVID-19 in the NWT, that approximately of those getting COVID-19, 80% of those people will have we're anticipating they'll have mild symptoms. And if you have mild symptoms, we're also planning that you could possibly stay at home and manage your illness in collaboration and partnership with a local healthcare provider, someone like a physician, a nurse practitioner, or even one of our public health nurses as well. We're also anticipating that 15% of those with COVID-19 will have moderate symptoms, and 5% of those people we anticipate with COVID-19 will have more severe symptoms. Those people that are diagnosed and working with their healthcare providers with moderate to severe symptoms will be transported for hospitalization at Stanton Territorial Hospital in Yellowknife. That decision was made very early on in our planning, recognizing the resources available both at Stanton and in Yellowknife as a community. Recognizing in the beginning that to increase resources in all of our regions and in addition to Stanton through not just a national pandemic, but a global pandemic would be incredibly challenging for recruitment, the purchase of additional ventilators, the equipment, and everything we might have needed in order to increase resources. So we really took a common sense approach to the development of this of our response plan to say, what can we do with the current resources, and then also with possible some upstaffing, but not to the extent where we're doubling capacity and that type of thing as well. So it's a really common sense approach, also keeping in line, knowing that eventually through the 4 phases, the 4th phase, we will be at our maximum capacity, and we will have to rely on our southern partners in the southern jurisdictions as well. So as I mentioned, the role for Stanton is to accept and work with and actually treat those active cases that are moderate to severe symptoms. The role for the Hay River Regional Health Center in this plan is to work with those patients for comfort care or palliative care. Obviously, that'll be on a case-by-case basis, working with the client and also obviously with their healthcare provider. We are hoping that we will have services for those in the South Slave as well. And Inuvik also has a role. They're also going to be working with active clients, but also they're going to have a role for comfort care for those clients in the Bodell and also the Sawtooth. So when we're talking about those for comfort care, I really want to get a message out there, we all do, is that we need to have people start talking about their goals of care. Goals of care is incredibly important for individuals. So we know what we want to respect people's wishes about their medical care when they have a severe illness. Some of the things that are really, truly important that we need to know is resuscitation, ventilation. Do people want chest compressions? Do people just want comfort care? They just want us to keep them comfortable depending on the critically ill patients that we do have and the stage of the disease that they are at. These discussions are incredibly important, especially those who have comorbidities or a chronic illness. We don't know when COVID is going to come to the north, but we know, watching what the southern jurisdictions in Canada and our neighboring communities are dealing with, this is an incredibly important conversation. We really want to encourage people to have that conversation. So people do know, we do know as a system, if you come into our system with COVID-19, what your wishes are. And please, I want to encourage people to reach out to their loved ones to have that conversation, and also reach out to a healthcare provider to have those conversations if and when it needs to be documented as well. So that's a really important aspect of it. And some of those interventions, like I mentioned, we want people to consider such things, like I said, resuscitation, going onto a ventilator, chest compressions, or just controlling the symptoms, signs and symptoms, and keeping people comfortable based on the stage of the disease that they're in. So those are really important conversations that we want people to have. You can see on the screen right now, you've got the 4 response stages to COVID-19. And as I mentioned, we're at early stages, stage 1, all the way to our scarce resource allocation in stage 4. Stage 1, we were in a few months ago, and we had our first COVID-19 hospitalization. And so we did go and we did put our plan in place for phase 1. Phase 2 is going to be community transmission, where there's more than one case in a community, and we need to flatten the curve in that community. Stage 3 is when more than 50% of COVID inpatient beds are full at Stanton, and we need to start moving people to the other communities. And stage 4 is when we've hit our maximum capacity in all areas of healthcare in the NWT, and we need to start reaching out and relying on some of our jurisdictions in the south and some of our partners in the south. So that is just a really brief and really quick walkthrough of just the summary of this document. Like I said, I'm anticipating you've probably seen this document, you've read it, and I think I'm really interested to hear some questions that are out there with you're representing the community. What kind of questions are out there and what kind of clarity are people looking for? So Mayor Jamieson, unless you want more of a description of a specific area of the document, if you're comfortable, I'd like to open it up to questions.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with questions. I'm going to start with Councillor Chambers. Do you have any questions? Councillor Chambers, do you have any questions? I'm going to take that as a no. Councillor Grunewagen, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, thank you. The document lays out everything pretty clearly.
Thank you. Councillor, who else do I have on the phone? Councillor Dufert.
Thank you, Your Worship. No questions at this time. I just want to mention that I did read the document, and yes, it does lay it all out, and it's pretty sobering to hear, you know, Aaron speak about comfort care and stuff, and you know, we've been pretty sheltered here in the north so far, but that's the reality of the disease. That, you know, once it starts spreading, it could spread very fast. But no other questions at this time, though. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. No questions from me. I've read the document and it's well laid out and so forth. I just want to do a big shout out for for our hospital and for all the employees there, and they're doing a great job. And we got to be kind to them. You know, some of these guys are working 12-hour shifts, and also, you know, we got to thank the people that are looking after our border. You know, they're the people that are protecting the Northwest Territories and so forth. So, you know, and they're working 12 hours a day also. And so we want to thank the people that are actually helping us be safe and work through this, and need to be kind to each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. I just one question was just, you know, recent discussions about a couple potential cases there, and the tracking of where those people have been and stuff. Is there, how does the department, I know, like when I was just at the hospital today getting an x-ray and stuff, so they were asking for my phone number and stuff. Obviously, I'm assuming if something went through the hospital, they would be contacting me to maybe self-isolate or, you know, make sure I don't have symptoms. But how does the system, you know, keep track of where people are, or go backwards from if somebody gets a case in Hay River, where they've been, who they've been in contact with? Like, how does that tracking system work currently?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have working with our territorial partners, NTH, SSA, and Talicho. We are looking for people to be trained as for contract tracing, and we're hoping to have a position in Hay River to assist our public health unit with that if and when we need it. And so basically it starts, first of all, the positive result will go to the Chief Public Health Officer first, and from there she will disseminate the information to where it needs to go based on the community that the positive case was identified in. From there, their health system will work directly with the patient and will walk through the patient and their history of where they've been and how many days back, depending on where they've been, and if it's travel related, that at that time the Chief Public Health Officer will decide how far back they go in their history. And then obviously we will contact those people that they remember, or obviously, as you've seen through the news, those businesses or those office spaces that they've been to, and let people know they've been in a certain facility during this time. If you were there, asking the public to also contact the Department of Health as well, and the Chief Public Health Officer for follow-up. That's a great opportunity for me to let people know, thank you, Robert, that we are asking people for all their information, not all, but obviously their name and their phone number when they do enter our facilities. And we appreciate everyone's willingness to do so. The important part of this is for tracking. The only reason for this is for tracking. If we do have a positive case that is traced back to one of our facilities, we will know who is in that facility that day, and that'll provide us with a tool to contact those people much quicker than working with the patient and trying to remember which departments they went in and who is in that department. So thank you for bringing that up, Robert. I'd like to encourage and thank those of the public who have been willing to provide us with their name and phone number at all of our facilities.
Yeah, I had another question just in that tracking. Is there any talk of an e-tracking with people's phones or anything like that? Or is the territorial government looking, or territorial wide system looking at that type of e-tracking? I've heard about it in the South, I guess.
Yeah, I'm in a few of the conversations around it, but not lately. So that's more of a Department of Health and the Chief Public Health Officer conversation to have those. At one point, we were looking at possible tracking. I just don't know if we have the demand for it. But again, I haven't been part of those conversations.
My next question is just along the lines of, you know, and I don't know if they coincide together, but you know, last week the concerns of 3 cases in the territory, and all of a sudden then now face masks are required in the liquor stores, and I'm just wondering if the territorial government has a plan in place, or the health department has a plan in place to go to masks required in public once we start seeing cases coming in. And along that same questioning is, will we take steps backwards from where we are to maybe having to go back to you know, shutting down certain, like in the South, we're seeing them shutting down stuff again, like whether it's fitness centers or whatever. So yeah. 2-part question, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. The second part for sure, we will definitely move if there is community spread identified, or if there is an outbreak in a certain community. Definitely, it'll be based on the decision of the Chief Public Health Officer of which stage of responsiveness we will be at, and it will be her discretion whether we move backwards. I would anticipate that yes, if we have community spread, we would go back to a previous stage to have more of a closure and more of a control of who is where. The first part of your question with masking, again, that's a decision. Any mandatory masking in the public or in the schools or in our facilities is also part of the Chief Public Health Officer's decision. But it also, as you know, for the liquor stores and also for some other built offices I've heard in Yellowknife, they've made it their own decision to have continuous masking and mandatory masking. So it can also be the decision of the business if they wish to do so. Masking and cloth masks within our health facility was a territorial approach between the 3 health authorities as part of our planning before the pandemic. So we just made that decision between the 3 health authorities to move to cloth masking.
Thank you. Anything further, Deputy Mayor?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further from any other questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
I just want to thank Aaron too as well. So thank you for what you do. Just a question on the flu fair. Is there a date for that set, or what's the process of that this year? Is there going to be any to that, or?
Absolutely. Let me just grab one more piece of paper. So yes. So the flu shots, our flu fair, obviously our flu clinic and our flu blitz is replacing our annual adult health fair, but unfortunately we cannot have due to COVID restrictions. But starting this week, we have a number of outreach clinics happening within the community. Our public health team is going out to community organizations such as our long-term care facility, our hospital staff, they're going over through all the schools, the high school, and they're also going over to Katladici First Nation, to the Ann Buggins Wellness Center and the Judith Fabian Home. So they're doing a number of outreach clinics this week throughout the community to provide the flu shot to those people. And starting next week for 2 weeks, the last week of October and the first week of November, we will be having a flu clinic offered at the Old Medical Clinic. We're asking people to phone anytime to book an appointment because we cannot just have walk-ins again due to COVID restrictions. So we're asking people to book a time to come in and get their flu shot. The flu clinic will be open from 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon for the next 2 weeks starting on Monday.
Thank you. Anything further from council? Well, again, thanks guys for coming in and doing this. And I know that it's been a ton of work putting these kind of documents together and working through it. So I thank you for all that you do for our community. Also, I think it is a good good time to remind everybody that, you know, the less contact you have, the easier it is to let the public health office know where you've been, who you've been in contact with. So try and keep it small where you go and what you do so that you do remember. Otherwise, we will have community spread, and that is not what we want the direction to go. So
Absolutely. And I want to encourage people, social distancing is critical as well. We're seeing a lot of outbreaks in the South, not just with long-term care facilities, but small family gatherings as well. They're starting to pick up as well. And also cloth masks. I encourage people to start wearing cloth masks and getting used to wearing a cloth mask. If we do have community spread, we're going to be encouraging people, and it may be mandated to start wearing them. So I encourage people to start wearing them as well. So thank you for your time.
thanks again, you guys.
Thanks, Darren.
Okay, so moving on to item number 6. Need a motion to approve the regular meeting of council minutes dated September 15th, 2020. Go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
I move the recommendation to approve the minutes for regular meeting of council September 15, 2020 as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Willows. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, item number 7, there was no business arising from the minutes, so we'll move on to item number 8, administrative inquiries. I'm going to pass it over to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. We'll start with the Director of Finance.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Mayor. A few updates from Finance Administration this evening. The Finance Committee met on Friday. We covered the 2021 budget schedule, viewed correspondence from our auditor, discussed leases, which were up for renewal, and reviewed the community enhancement grant application. Successful grant recipients will be notified once the 2021 budget is approved. Primary focus for the coming week is preparing the 2021 budget. Part of that will be a discussion with council next week to go through the preliminary 2021 capital items and determine if there's any other items which should be investigated for inclusion. We're targeting mid to late November to consult with the public prior to finalizing the budgets in mid-December. Finance is also working towards third quarter financial statements, which we're targeting to bring to committee in early November and before council the middle of that month. That concludes my update for this evening.
Thank you. Back to any questions for our Director of Finance? None being noted, moving back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Director of Protective Services, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few items from the Fire Department and Protective Services Department, I guess. I guess everybody's aware we had a communications tower failure last Wednesday at about 10:15 or so. As it stands right now, it's looking like this is going to go through as an insurance claim. I've got support from Karen Corinne, and we're just working through that part of it. As it stands right now, our radio systems are still working for fire and EMS. So we are able to communicate with our firefighters, that type of thing. So dispatch is still working fine. And you may wonder why the tower is still sitting kind of the way it is. It's the only way we're going to have radio operations until we get a new tower in there. So we're not holding off getting it done for anything for other than to make sure that we've got working radios. As it stands, the IT functioning, the IT services are still functioning off the tower the way it is. They've got some reduced service from that, but we're still working anyway. Presently, we're working with West Tower out of Vancouver, who sent a couple guys up, take a look at the tower that we've got now, and they're trying to see whether they've got anything in inventory in Vancouver they can get up here to replace what we've got fairly soon. So that's about all I can say about the tower failure. We're still working on it, and we're still communicating, so that's a good sign. As far as breakup equipment is concerned, I've installed sensors at both the Falls and the Paradise, so they're both on new sensors. We haven't hooked up the data loggers as of yet. We're still doing some testing and bench testing with those. I'm doing some bench testing here in the fire hall, and I also have E&R Resources doing some bench testing of another data logger in Yellowknife. So we'll have them well tested, and hopefully we'll have everything working perfect here by next spring. E&R is purchasing the cameras for us, so we'll have cameras that are going to be good for daytime and nighttime. So we'll actually be able to see what the river is doing 24 hours a day during breakup. With the power being disconnected at the high rise, we've also removed all of our radio equipment out of there. So our EMO radio is sitting in the fire hall. Depending upon what happens with the pulling of the communication stuff for community television and for the radio stations and that type of thing, I'm hoping to pull our one last antenna that belongs to the fire department off, or actually belongs to EMO, off that building and have it placed into our building. So I guess lots of stuff on communications right now, and we're definitely working through any of the issues we have, and everything seems to be working all right for now. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you. Any questions for our Director of Protective Services? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the replacement tower. Are we looking at a bigger capacity, and are we kind of looking to replace where it would currently locate, or are we looking at options to go with a bigger tower that might have more capacity? Yeah.
Well, our plan at this point is to replace what we had, probably with a more skookum tower than what we had. I would suggest going with a steel tower rather than aluminum, which was part of the problem, and having it where it's guide. And if we do that at that point, then we can probably load it up a little heavier with antennas. But after seeing what we had happen here recently, I don't think we want to get carried away with doing a whole bunch of antennas on top of the fire hall.
Fair enough. Any other questions for our Director of Protective Services? Nothing noted. Back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. I'll pass it on to the Director of Recreation, please. Stefan, you're still muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I guess, operational update on the community center, especially with regards to the skating ice surface starting back up. Things are going well with the new COVID procedures and each group receiving different approvals. There are some kinks to work out in the details and in the routines of mostly in arrival and leaving the facilities. But for the most part, everybody seems to be working well, and people seem to be very happy with resuming skating and sports activities. Similarly, we're in our second block of fitness and after-school programming. Those are also going well. Numbers are slightly up from the first block, and we continue to have good participation there. We did have a bit of a scare with regards to the ice plant. Our main compressor went down about a week and a half ago. There was some troubleshooting required there over the weekend. And with some local contractor support, we were able to bypass. It was a faulty sensor, which had us at risk of losing both the curling and the skating ice surfaces. But we've got a temporary repair, and we've got some refrigeration coming up to do a full repair, and we should be in good shape after that. With that repair, the curling club has continued building their ice. So they're expecting to resume programming. I don't have an updated date for when they resume, but it seems like their new executive is hopeful, and they're hoping to use the ice surface as well as the lounge upstairs. They've got special permission to make use of the lounge. We have also received our formal confirmation from the Office of the Chief Public Health Officer for the Aquatic Center to reopen. We were expecting we'd have had verbal confirmation before, but we received the letter last week. It allows for up to 24 people in the Aquatic Center, 20 in the pool area and 4 in the hot tub area. We have posted that letter to Facebook with a short message summarizing and indicating that timelines and further details will be communicated shortly. We'll be providing our own operational, more details on our operations and what our schedule will look like. We'll communicate that by the end of the week. We are looking at staff training on the weekend of October 30th, staff training in the pool, and then reopening to the public shortly after that. Assuming everything goes well, we are in communication with Public Works regarding filling the pool and making sure that we fill it with water that's as clean as possible. So there are extra procedures or precautions being taken given the water advisories that we're currently under. We also, with regards to Port Landing, we had 2 projects that we were hoping to complete before the snow flew and before the ice started forming in Port Landing, and unfortunately we could not get those projects done. So we could not do any dredging, and we couldn't repair the retaining wall. Both those projects are being delayed till next year. We have a rec committee meeting tomorrow at lunch. We'll be providing an update on operations, but emphasizing further mitigating measures that we can take if we do get cases in Hay River. I'm happy that we got a presentation from Aaron tonight. And I think what we'll do is I'll try to get direction from the committee regarding extra measures that we would take and kind of what would be the triggers that would have us taking additional measures at the community center. I will also be presenting my proposed 2021 rec rates, which I'll seek recommendation from the committee to bring on to council's finance committee afterwards. And I'll also be updating them on some agreements that we're working towards with 3 community groups, being the Hay River Ski Club, Hay River Curling Club, and the Hay River Golf Club, with regards to town assets, town facilities, and with regards to the use of those facilities by those groups. Those agreements are also have either been presented previously to the policy committee or will be brought to the policy committee after recommendation. Lastly, on the tourism and economic development side, there will be a committee meeting this Thursday with a special presentation from Eric Chalker of ITI, with the hope of discussing the idea of itineraries for local organizations to encourage vacations and kind of plan tours or plan visits that people could purchase, and advertising of those, as well as our tourism and economic development coordinator has been submitting a Canor application. Our SAO is taking the lead on that one, but I'll be working with Peter on our winter tap application and our ICIP cultural spaces funding applications, which are both concertable funds for recreation and tourism assets. Those are my updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for our Director of Recreation? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's not a question. It's just more a compliment. Very inspirational. That's really appreciated your presentation there. And just to say that, we're navigating through a lot of stuff with COVID-19 and that type of stuff. And you've got lots of balls in the air with recreation. And I just want to compliment you on your enthusiasm and the way you spoke tonight. So thank you very much for what you do for the town. Thank you.
Thanks. Deputy Mayor Bouchard.
Yeah, so I was reading the letter on Facebook today, but do we have and it was on my phone, so is there a set date for the pool to be open, or we're estimating kind of first week in November sometime?
Director of Recreation.
No set date at this point. I guess the set date we have for staff training is October 30th. We are hoping that we can work with Public Works to have the pool open. They seem to favorable to the ability of having the pool available for them. But I don't want to provide a date for public reopening. At this point, we just want to make sure that the systems are working well, that we can get the water levels appropriate. I think all we can say is that we can expect to be open early November to the public.
Thank you. Any other questions from council?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Dufert.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to echo Steve's comments there. I mean, Councillor Anderson, and say that we really appreciate all the work that they've done trying to get our rec center open and working towards getting the pool open. It's been a double whammy with COVID and our water turbidity problems. So I've had a lot of feedback from people in the community. There's a lot of excitement building up. You know, people are so excited to be back skating and hockey, and it's just really brought a lot of life to the downtown center again. So again, as Councillor Anderson said, thank you for your good work. It's very exciting. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions or comments from council? None being noted. Back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Director of Public Works and Services, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Start off with some good news on the waterfront. Our test results from this afternoon at the Old Town Truck Fill Station were looking good. Our residuals were good there. The water tests in the reservoir, unfortunately, weren't quite at the levels we need. Probably because the water's been sitting in the reservoir for longer because the volume's in there. But the results that we did get at the Old Town Truck Fill have us hopeful that hopefully by tomorrow we'll be getting the same results in the reservoir, and that'll we'll pass those on to public health and hopefully get off the boil water advisory. Hopeful for tomorrow, but again, that depends on the test results tomorrow. But it's looking good this week. Along the water lines, we did get our water treatment plant report. We received that report from MACA last week. So have been reviewing that. There's a couple of minor issues in there that we just want them to address and clean up. And then I will be working with the people who did do the inspection and the report they'll be putting together a presentation for council on the report and the recommendations coming out of that. So we'll look forward to doing that in the near future at one of the council meetings. And in the meantime, we will be looking to implement some of the immediate recommendations that came out of that report. Anything that we can do right away with not much financial input into it, but there's a few items on there that we can look to tackle immediately here, and we'll get started on those as soon as possible. Other projects, the lift station project is kind of winding down for the fall. They won't be excavating all the way down to the levels that they had initially hoped for. Just some issues with the types of soil that they're encountering, some delays in getting their sheet piling in, and the weather kind of taking a turn here this week has kind of forced them to wait until the spring to do their excavating. It shouldn't have any effect on the overall completion schedule. We're still on track to have the project completed on time there. Outside of that, just been dealing with some resident issues, getting public works things prepped for the winter, cleaning up some ditching issues to hopefully help with spring melt, and working on some project preparation and budgeting items for 2021 capital projects. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for our Director of Public Works? Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just talking to one of the businesses down on the lake shore there. Did we, they're having troubles with some water levels again on the weekend. Did we know if we followed up with them on water levels and how things were going out there?
Yes, I can answer that. They have been followed up on and there is stuff being done.
Good, thank
Any
you.
questions for our Director of Public Works? None being noted, back to SAO Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll run through a few items quickly here. With some of the cases that have been announced in the COVID cases, presumptive cases, I should state at this point, being announced last week. The town is looking to share, and I think it's timely to rekindle some of our communication that's occurring there around COVID protection. So we will be doing that. With the high winds last week, certainly activities occurring around town. The Director of Protective Services briefed you on the tower. We also have paid some attention to what's going on our lakeshore properties, working with MACA, addressing some drainage concerns there, and just collecting some information on residents that do have concerns. Myself and our team have focused a fair amount over the last week or two on our strategic planning update, and that will be provided under new business here. So yeah, a lot of scoping documents and working on high priority initiatives and what that will look like for completion for this council. The Director of Protective Services and myself met with one of the taxi operators last week, just amid some ongoing concerns with services and those service levels and how they relate to the bylaw that's in place. We're waiting to meet with the other current licensed operator, but primarily discussions at this point are, how do we work together towards improving services within town. It's been an ongoing issue for several years, but certainly heightened by what's going on with COVID and all levels of COVID, both from the demand and for providing services as well. So we will work with them on that and present some solutions at a later council meeting. Starting some work on updating our MTS, their consolidated lease agreement, and what that looks like in their new operating environment as it transferred from NTCL to MTS. A handful of land lease compliance issues we're dealing with. That's where the town holds the head lease. So a few of those are kind of minor, but a couple of them are larger and ongoing, and Lands has been providing assistance with that, but we are tied into that work as the holder of the head lease, even though it is they are subleased in most cases. In alignment with the presentation received today from Health and Social Services, there is a requirement for the town to submit a kind of community isolation surge planning document to MACA. So we're working, not recycling, but working with Health and Social Services on the information that they have and the mandates that they have associated with those activities. But as our role in coordination of the local EMO and coordinating various groups in town, we do need to start thinking and getting more prepared for cases that may occur and the coordination of resources. A couple small updates on the HR side. Just to note that our civil infrastructure manager advertisement has closed. We're preparing to begin for interviews for that process. We are hopeful that we will find a candidate through that. And we have re-advertised our public works foreman position. So the first round did not receive a favorable position for offering a contract. And our aquatic supervisor position that, or advertisement that's closed, and we are now moving through the interview process, and hopefully we'll move towards making an offer there soon. And that's all I have for you today.
Thank you. Any questions for our SAO? Not a one. Got off lucky, Glenn. Okay, so moving on to item number 9A, Tourism and Economic Development Report for September 2020. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Worship. Move the recommendation that, recommended by myself and Councillor Greenwagon that the Council of Town River accepts the Tourism and Economic Development Report for the month of September 2020 as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions to the motion? None being noted. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item 9B is the Emergency Services Monthly Report for September 2020. Deputy Mayor Bouchard.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chambers, that the Council of Town of Hay River accepts the Emergency Services Activity Report for September 2020 as presented.
Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thanks. Item number 9C, Municipal Enforcement Monthly Report for September 2020. Councillor Willows.
I'm just waiting for the document to come up in front of me. There we go.
There you go.
Recommended and moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Groenewegen, that the Council of the Town of Hay River accepts the Municipal Enforcement Report for September 2020 as presented.
Thank you. Any questions from council? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. 9D, Public Works Monthly Report for September 2020. Councillor Chambers. *6.
Can you hear me
I
now?
can hear you now. Yeah. Go ahead.
Finally. Okay, I'm just trying to find the page here. Moved by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Bouchard, the Council of the Town of Hay River accepts the Public Works Monthly Report for September 2020.
Thank you. Any questions from council? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. 9D, Public Works Monthly Report for September 2020. No, we're on recreation, aren't we? Sorry.
Recreation.
9E, Recreation Monthly Report for September 2020, and that would be Councillor Anderson.
Of the Town of Hay River accepts the report entitled Recreation and Community Services Monthly Report for September as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 10A, Municipal Enforcement Plan. I'll get a motion from Deputy Mayor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I move that the Council of Town of Hay River approves and supports the Municipal Enforcement Plan as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Willows. Any questions to the motion? I know that this is, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I like the plan. I like this layout. It kind of gives, I think it's going to give the public a kind of concept of what the activities and where the activities happen and are focused what time of the year, depending on the thing. I guess my only concern in seeing the document was just that traffic bylaw. Seems like it's heavily weighted that way, and I'm not sure if that's where I would feel comfortable seeing a lot of the activity happening. I'm not sure if that's just maybe because of timing, but it seems like there's a lot of focus there, and I'm not sure if that's something I would kind of see. I don't have a problem with us enforcing that bylaw. It's just, it seems like that's heavily weighted that direction. Is that my impression of the way that this graph reads out?
Yeah, the graphs kind of had me questioning too, but I'll let SAO Smith answer that one.
Sure. Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I think probably good to just preface it with an indication that, you know, the plan is around a prioritization. So it does speak in some cases towards, you know, initiatives that are conducted at certain times a year, but it's really around the focus of that time where those activities are occurring. So there will be, you know, attention, especially from a monitoring perspective throughout the year, but try to indicate where it made sense for us to focus our resources, especially on the support and the communication and education pieces. But with respect to the traffic bylaw there, you know, some of it is just around the seasonality of it and recognizing that, say, in the winter, we're looking at activities related to safe driving under winter conditions, things that change throughout the season. But there is a lot that falls under that bylaw as well. So I think one of the things that's not really maybe reflected in the plan is how we are trying to use those opportunities to during stops to educate as well. So while we are continually monitoring those activities, it's not necessarily a fining approach. It's the opportunity to check in and ensure people have the proper documents and understand the violations that may have occurred. We haven't, there is an indication in the budget section around revenues, and I think at this point, unless council is looking for changes in the future, you know, we have kept revenues projected at quite minor, but we do want to obviously ensure that there's compliance. But at this point, a lot of the activities will be around educating and ensuring safety. So yeah, it does look like, again, back to the traffic bylaw, that there is a lot of activity there, but there is a fair amount that occurs throughout the year. And at this point, we want to make sure that we're focusing on safety for the winter.
Yeah, Your Worship, and I guess my question and my comments are kind of, I think that's the high visibility stuff, is when we have our bylaw out there working the streets. I mean, they definitely know we have a bylaw officer out there, because I think there has been some stopping going on, and I have heard good compliments about education side of it. So yeah, just that graph seems heavy that way, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Willows.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I mean, I like the approach. I like this two-step approach. I like the education piece and the warnings. I like to see that we have some flexibility there. I think it's important. It's been, geez, I suppose it's been a number of years since we've had a bylaw officer. So, you know, it's helpful to do that education piece and sort of remind people. I'm also happy to see the weighting that I see towards traffic, because again, we've sort of been in without bylaw officer for a number of years. And I think, you know, we could all use a little bit of reminders about things like distracted driving, stop signs, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I do like the approach, and I'm happy to see that, you know, we have somebody on staff now that be able to deal with these issues. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. No, this package is really well thought out and very well put together. I guess one of the questions I have is the unsightly bylaw. You know, we've had some issues with that come up in the past few years. How are we going to navigate through that, or how do we feel comfortable navigating through that, or how does our town representative feel in terms of dealing with the unsightly bylaw and that type of thing? Or do we need to look at the bylaw and upgrade it, or just comments on that?
SAO Smith.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, it's a big one, and I'd say that, you know, we have other planning documents that relate or that speak towards the importance, say, of town beautification, as an example, or tourism plans. So we recognize that there's a lot of effort that can be taken there, and in some areas within that bylaw, there's really systemic issues throughout the entire town. So it's one that, you know, we could benefit from some clarity and interpretation. And there's you know, even within town, there might be different applications which would be relevant to a commercial versus an urban versus a more rural, you know, location for some of it. So yeah, there is a lot to consider there, and I think the more we can define that and set precedent that collectively and take a strategic approach to that one, we can benefit from. At this point, we're focusing efforts primarily around the summer and activities that can be maintained or lawn spaces and housing issues that can be maintained through our support. But there is a lot more opportunity, I think, with this one, especially with this bylaw.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Anderson. You're on mute, Steve. Sorry.
Sorry. Just in terms of feedback from our new employee, how's he getting settled into the community, and how's the community been responding to him?
SAO Smith.
Yeah, and I'll pass that on to Ross, and in case he wants to add anything else as well, our Director of Protective Services. Go ahead, Ross.
Thank you, Your Worship. Actually, we've gotten quite a bit of really good feedback from residents of Hay River with what we're doing with the bylaw stuff, which is a good thing to see. Travis is fitting into the community very well. It's grasped right into the fire department. Is working well with the ambulance crew and everything else. So he seems to be really happy with Hay River. He certainly wants to continue working for us. So, and that's kind of good news for me, because it's he's taking on a heck of a role. This is a big job with a lot of work that needs to be done, and he seems to be up for the task.
Yeah, thank you. Further, Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I just want to thank Travis for being here then, and you know, definitely it's a big job he's taken on, and you know, we haven't had a bylaw officer, or not a bylaw officer, but we haven't had anybody in that position for some time and so forth. So really hope that the town cooperates as well, and we all work together as a group to make our town better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duford.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in, and just being a social media watchdog. I think that the people of the town of Hay River are going to like what they see on this document, that the monitoring is focused on animal control and traffic, because those are 2 of the issues that I routinely see come up on social media. If people have a problem with something in the town, I'd say 90% of the time they fall into one of those 2 categories. So I want to commend the people who put that report together. I think they hit the nail on the head. And I think, as I said, I think people are going to really like to see the focus of the bylaw officer on animal control and traffic bylaws. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, nothing noted. I'm going to, all in favor. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item number 10B, Fire Smart Project. Looking for a motion. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Move the recommendation that the Council of the Town of Hay River directs administration to move forward with the Fire Smart activity on the present ignition line through a contribution agreement from ENR totaling up to $45,000.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Willows. And any questions to the motion? None being noted. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And 10D, Deputy Mayor Bouchard, excused absence for Councillor Dewey.
Yeah, I move that we excuse Councillor Dewey from the town regular meeting of council for October 19th, 2020.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Willows. Any questions to the motion? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carries. Item number 11, and there were no notices of motion. So that takes, oh, strategic plan, sorry. 10C, rushing things here. Glenn does have a presentation, so I'm going to put it over to him and we'll do our strategic plan update.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, there's a fair amount to the slide deck. I'll go through it at a fairly high level, and then if that's all right at the end, I'll answer any questions. So I'll get Stacy to, as long as that works, Stacy, I'll just direct you on what slide we're at. But I guess first off, just a little background. Maybe move to the next slide, Stacy. A refresher on the background. So back in February 2019, Council and Administration met, that was early into this council's term, to co-develop a strategic plan for the organization, and that one had an outlook that went from 2019 to 23, and council approved that plan in May of 2019. And then we had a more formal update on the progress made, progress update in August of this year, 2020. And we provided a list of strategies and initiatives and what had been achieved. In the council report that's in front of you today as well, it does have highlights of that report to council. It's not included in the slide presentation, but that was presented separately. Later on at the end of August, council administration did meet again, and we held a one-day session where we went through essentially 3 stages. One was to review and modify elements of the existing plan. So we looked at our vision, mission, and values, our sustainability pillars, and our strategies. The second major step was then to prioritize those strategies in terms of high, medium, and low. And then the third commitment and coming out of that session was to develop a communication plan that would present information to council, the public, and staff. Stacy, the next slide, please, here. So the vision and mission, there was no changes that came out of it, out of our update session. So this stayed as is. I'll just quickly, the vision statement is Hay River is a culturally diverse regional hub that celebrates its history, its natural setting, its social and recreational well-being, and its opportunities for business. And our mission statement stayed as volunteers power us, business drives us, and our environment inspires us. Next slide. So the next slide points towards our values. And again, these did not change. So our core values are around accessibility, creativity, growth, integrity, partnerships, and various elements of sustainability. Next slide. So with the sustainability pillars, these are kind of our core functions that we provide as an organization and working with the community. There was 4 in the old plan, and that was governance, economy, social and culture, and infrastructure and environment were combined as one. So coming out of those meetings, we recognized, especially in today and what we're dealing with COVID and risks of high water, that we needed to emphasize public safety and environment. So that pillar was created, and the council and administration worked through various initiatives or identified initiatives for meeting strategies for that pillar. Next slide. So next slide takes us through, this is the exercise where we focused on or went through a prioritization of our strategies in 3 types, again, high, medium, and low. So the high priority items, we tweaked this a little bit, recognizing the time that we had left with this current council. But the plan goes for multiple years into 2023, as I mentioned, and yearly updates would occur. But we wanted to really focus on what is high priority for this council in completing before their end of term in 2021. So the high priority items are strategies that must be completed or have significant progress over the next 12 months. Medium priority items are on our list, and we hope to be making action on even over the next year, but that relies on when resources or better information becomes available. And then low priority initiatives are actions that probably won't be conducted in the current calendar year. Next slide. So the majority of the slides, or the remaining slides, take us through our high ranked strategies. So that's really what came out of our planning session, was that we didn't really change the medium and low initiatives. We didn't identify new initiatives or strategies there, but we did identify some new ones that were high priority, and in some cases removed some high priorities, in some cases bumped them up. So the plan and the presentation focuses on those. I think there's 10 high priority strategies that fall underneath the pillars of governance, economy, infrastructure, public safety, and environment. And I don't think there wasn't any high ones under our other pillar. So I won't read through these right now. I will speak to each of them in the remaining slides though. So Stacy, if you can go to the next slide, or actually that one, perfect. That one there, yeah. So what administration has done over the last couple of weeks is, this is just an example. It's not included in the presentation file, but for each strategy, we created a scoping document which speaks towards initiatives that would help us meet that strategy for each particular strategy that was identified. So within that, we have a description that's a bit more descriptive than what would be in our plan and in the presentation. Metrics that would indicate where we are with moving through that strategy and the initiatives underneath, as well as timelines that would be tied into those activities. And then we also identified our resources. So primarily our human resources that are needed to complete the initiative and meet the strategy. And that includes internal and external resources. And you can't see it on the slide, but right at the bottom is a budget as well. So we took our first high-level estimate. Sometimes they've been more developed through other budgeting exercises, but what is needed in order to achieve that strategy over the next year. So all of those, we've got a lot of those documents, again, not included in this presentation, but they are summarized in the slides to come. So Stacey, if you can go to the next slide. So I will run through these again. This is a summary of the strategy and the scoping documents that have been prepared for each. So our first slide here, in no particular order, it starts with our sustainability pillar of governance. And the first strategy is to complete a human resource plan to achieve the desired outcomes for the high priority initiatives that are in the strategic plan. So key deliverables through that is we'll prepare a risk matrix and identify any mitigating measures that are needed to ensure we have adequate human resources to complete the group in the planning document of the high priority items during that 1 year. Complete or see significant progress, I should say. And the target completion date for this particular initiative is by end of November this year. So we'll have a document that speaks towards the resources needed to complete these strategies. On the next slide, this strategy, also under governance, the strategy again developed through our planning process that council administration, when we last met, is to communicate information that is relevant, timely, and easily accessible to the public. So key deliverables through that is really using our website and our social media. It's our two most common platforms that are used for sharing of information, but we recognize that there are improvements that are needed in both of those areas. So getting better organization of information on the website, using social media to create more awareness of information that is being published, creating more awareness. So we will be looking at all of our procedures through this strategy and departments and saying where should we be improving our communication. Target completion date for this is we'll have the plan together and start working on some of our publications. Well, there'll be communication that, of course, is going throughout the year and beyond. But we plan to kick it off with some website development work that will need about a $5,000 budget to reorganize. On the next slide, still underneath governance, and this one has a few key deliverables to it that we put into the slide here. But this one is around ensuring the strategy of ensuring that all bylaws and policies are current. So in the first key deliverable, the bylaw there, 2252, is the financial administration bylaw. So that in conjunction with the omnibus fees bylaw will be completed by November 30th of this year. We do have to, we are expending some dollars budgeted of $10,000 to support completion of those. And the omnibus one is a big one. It's looking at all of our bylaws and all the fees and rates and those and bringing it into one, and with all the rate adjustments that we have for those bylaws that, individually they'll have to come to council for approval. Another key deliverable under the strategy of ensuring bylaws and policies are current is our taxi license bylaw. So we've prioritized this one based on recent concerns and undertakings, and hope to have something in front of council for the end of this year. Next slide. Continuing with key deliverables 3 and 4. So update bylaw 2240, which is our management bylaw. And that should have considerations for what came out of collective bargaining as well. But these have all been on our list that's been to our policy committee and in alignment with the prioritization there. Key deliverable 4 is our bylaw 1786, which is our water rates. So we're currently undertaking our cost of service study, and subsequent to that would be the update of the bylaw. So that one does have a significant amount of work. We've already been spending some dollars on that one. Around 15,000 is budgeted for completion in March of the new year. Next slide. And continuing on with the bylaws and deliverables underneath that strategy. So updating a bylaw 1812, which is our zoning and development bylaw. There's been a lot of attention to this one over the years by this council and past council. It's a big planning document, it's a big bylaw right now, over hundreds of pages. It includes a lot that represent our maps for zoning. So this one's a big one, and it does subsequently need a good budget for supporting that of $50,000. And that would see our completion by end of August next year. Key deliverable number 6 is actually the municipal enforcement plan that's been in front of you now. So it's not a bylaw, but it's actually a plan that we presented to you now to serve as a guide for our protective service undertakings. That one's completed out in-house and no cost there, but we're moving towards finalization this month, of course. The next slide. On the next slide is the last of the key deliverables for ensuring that all bylaws and policies are current. And this pertains to really moving forward with our contracts that have expired for garbage collection and landfill management. So bylaw 619 is our garbage collection and 1516 is our dump tipping fees. So updating those bylaws are required ahead of moving forward with our RFP process and getting into contracts. And so we would see completion of that as our target completion of June 30th, 2021. The next strategy that's a high priority is completion of a land development plan to meet current and future needs. So again, several deliverables underneath this. But where we want to start with this is this current council hasn't been informed on the land development plans that the prior council had worked on. So we want to make sure that, with several options there in a tricky approach towards trying to finance and develop those areas, that we review what work has been done and affirm that, move towards affirming the direction that this council wants to take. So we aim to have that ready for council and presented by the end of November of this year. Next slide is again under the land development strategy. Key deliverable number 2 is around Fraser Place. So that's our full set of testing, our research, our design, rezoning, and pre-sale activities that are to be completed. And there's a couple targets underneath there as well, but one of them is to have our in-ground services completed and restored to grade by end of 2021, and for our pre-sales completed that year to have our financing for that construction. So the target date at this point, with asterisks and recognition that it might take some time to sell and have that area fully developed, but to get to the points that I've spoken to, is end of December 2021. And right now the figure that has been in front of council is 2.7 million. But we'll get more information once the scope and design options are in front of council. On the next slide, this is a key deliverable number 3 for the strategy. So after we have reviewed the land development plan with you and identified our prioritization for some of the other development areas, we want to move forward with exploring developer interest to partner with us for development of at least one, if not more, of the subdivisions outside of Fraser Place. So that would be see completion of that by March of next year, 2021. And again, we'd be using dollars to support external planner consultation on that work. On the next slide, the strategy under economy is to reduce our electrical costs for our utility costs for consumers. And that one at this point surrounds the key deliverable of completing work with the franchise acquisition and seeking approval from the Public Utilities Board. So we have seen some timelines that have been presented to this council, and it assumes or makes assumptions based on what processes may occur especially with the legal proceedings. There is one coming up here this month very shortly, but following the pattern that's been apparent so far, we would see a target date of completion for September 30th of 2021. The next slide, again, under the economy pillar, is support economic development and diversification in the town and region. So this one's really working on processes through administration, but likely some support from council as well, where we would modify and look at our internal processes and responsibilities within our departments towards facilitating a better response, or more customer friendly, I guess, or focused response for development in town. But the plan sees initiative items towards meeting with key employers, developers, tourism operators, other departments of government, and discussing ways that the town can support development and promote business opportunities. So we'll work towards getting those meetings, identifying who should be at the meetings, and kicking off by March 31st of 2021.
Is there a reason why the key deliverables aren't numbered here, or is that?
Sorry, in this slide, it's again, some of them are presented in more detail than others, but I spoke through what's on our initiative document, but it wasn't well presented through this one. So it's just, this one's really at a high level, I'll say. But all the things that I spoke to do have kind of targets in terms of when we would complete those activities ahead of the overall completion. On the next slide, Stacy, we are moving into infrastructure. So the replace aging infrastructure in accordance with our capital replacement plan. So several deliverables here. The first one, though, is we want to really start positioning. We want to make sure we're positioning ourselves for third-party funding applications for infrastructure replacement, such as ISIP, and some deadlines coming up there with the next wave. Before we haven't seen the official announcement yet, but we expect to hear on that very soon, and would see applications probably due by the end of this year, and that's for some supporting capital projects that at this point look towards up to 2027. But we want to review and update some of those project briefs and where we are, and prepare any studies or work that's needed for those applications, and submit them with the best chance of them being approved. So we do anticipate having to spend some money there, again, through our consulting budgets, and it equates to about $25,000, and we would have that in place for end of November this year. On the next slide, the key deliverable 2 under replacing aging infrastructure is getting into an agreement with our qualified contractor who will manage the town hall demolition. That's the key first step there, and then working towards completing a plan for the new town hall facility by August 31st of 2021. So the target date for getting the town hall torn down and this initiative completed is August 31st, 2021. We've already budgeted $270,000 just for the demolition. On the next slide, we continue on with the replacing aging infrastructure, and this is for our major roadworks and underground work for Beaver Crescent and Riverview Drive. So next year and through 2021 construction season, we would see those completed and ready for pavement, curbs, and gutters in the following year, but we would tender for that. And the budgeted figure is $11.3 million. On the next slide, again, under the infrastructure pillar, the completion of a 10-year capital plan that includes both replacement assets and considers our development needs that are projected in our community plan and other documents. We have a 10-year plan right now, or we have had a 10-year plan, but we really want to take a more critical look and start working on firmer details towards the latter years of those agreements. So this is really tied into asset management and understanding our current state of our infrastructure and trying to reduce surprises. So our target date for completion of that plan is February of next year. The next slide, we move into our public safety and environment, which is the new pillar that was added through our strategic planning session. And it's focusing on ensuring that the first strategy is focusing on the town employees and having the knowledge and equipment to follow safe practices during a pandemic. and ensuring that our facilities are operated in compliance with pandemic safe practices. So we've already been doing a lot of work on this, and you've heard it through your updates that we provide to council, and especially with some of the key connection points in recreation. But we want to ensure the safety of our employees and of course the public. So ensuring that our facilities are equipped to operate in compliance with the Chief Public Health Officer and changes that may occur through this year and moving forward. On the next page, the next slide, under Public Safety and Environment, 4.51C, work with other levels of governments and Indigenous groups to respond to the impacts of climate change and identify and implement any emergency measures, especially around flood mitigation, but also preparedness and response. So we've been hearing, this council's been hearing lately, concerns from residents, concerns with high waters, perhaps indicative of things that are occurring with climate change. And so we have submitted already a funding application to try to support, study and support infrastructure to help with mitigation. At this point, we submitted an application for $250,000 for that flood mitigation through climate change funding. So we will wait to hear on that, but it'll probably need to undertake, and we do plan to meet with various government departments that would be tied into especially flood mitigation to determine who's doing what and whose responsibilities and other resources that could be made available. And moving on to the next slide. So that concludes the presentation on the 10 high priority initiatives. So the other element that came out of our strategic planning session was to talk about communication. So we'll be presenting today is one element for you to approve the plan and the changes that were made to our high priority items. We have committed towards moving towards a quarterly update for council. And so we will do that, as well as we'll also have a strategic plan, sort of an executive summary that covers a lot of what I went through today. But it's intended to keep us all in alignment and ensure that councillors are able to share that information with the public for priorities that are targeted for this term of council, but also move beyond initiatives that the next council will be focusing on. And that concludes the presentation that I have. So certainly, if Mayor Jameson wishes, I can answer any questions.
Okay. Questions from council? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I like the presentation. I think it kind of lays out where our priorities are for sure. My question, or more of a concern, is just some of those budgetary items, like you indicated, especially on the last one where we've applied for $250,000. Some of those things are definitely dependent on third-party funding. Some of them are dependent on annual budgets and in our current fiscal position. So I think that's got to be part of the communication plan. That, I mean, this is our top priority, but some of them are definitely, if we're going to spend, millions of dollars to do a land development, we need to be able to sell some of the properties. If we're going to do mitigation, we need to have some of that climate change money. Just an example of that, like if that's out in the public and everyone's saying, well, it's going to happen. Well, some of it might be dependent on some of that third-party funding, same as, federal government funding for our infrastructure money, for Beaver Crescent and Riverview completion. But yeah, in our reserves, it's going to be discussion for us in capital again this year, capital budget this year. So it's just, yeah, these are our goals, I guess, but the money needs to be found. We don't necessarily have all the money to do all those. So we'll be dependent on some of that funding arriving. Oh, you're on mute, Candace, right? Or Your Worship.
Yes, totally hear what you're saying, that we're going to be making decisions over the next couple of months on what kind of money is going towards some of these initiatives. Some of these initiatives, we already have the money in place. Yeah, so those are decisions that will be coming out of it, but this is what came out of our last strategic plan, and we did ask administration to put numbers to it so that we'd have an idea of what the cost was. So yeah, working through this, I'm sure we will be making some hard decisions in the coming months when we go into budget for capital as well as O&M. Any other questions from, go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Council administration spent a full Saturday putting this together, and just want to thank Glenn at SAO for putting it all together for us, and for the presentation as well as the other administration people. This is a good tool for us to work on as a council and administration to move forward in the next year to accomplish some of these priorities and so forth. So I think it's a good roadmap, and I think it has a lot of value to it. So we just need to work hard to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council?
Thank you, Worship.
Hang on one sec, Deputy Mayor. Anybody on the phone? Councillor Grenaway, Councillor Dufert, Councillor Chambers, any comments?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to mention that I thought it was a really well presented document, and I really liked the at the end where we're going to be presented with quarterly updates on our plan along with our financial statements. That I think that's a very good idea. That'll keep some of our high priority items on the forefront and in the minds of council. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely keeping us on track. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, with us going through our budget process here quick over the next couple months there and going out to the public for some of those things, that this document is important for that too. It shows them what we're seeing over the next year or two that are priorities. So, yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. And good to note that we should have the document available when we do go for public consultation, which should be happening in the next month, I would think. So no further questions from council? And I too would like to thank SAO Smith for all his hard work on this and for keeping us on track, putting our ideas to paper. So good stuff, good work. Moving on to item number 12, I need a motion to go in camera. Councillor Anderson.
I think we need to move this recommendation, do we not?
Oh, sorry, haven't voted on that. Skip it over. Okay, all in favor?
No, we got to move the recommendation. We haven't done that yet.
Oh, nobody did?
No.
We did.
Councillor Jamieson, there was no mover or seconder for the.
Okay,
for the
thank you.
plan.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Anderson, you want to?
Yeah, I can.
Have the honors.
Thank you, Worship. Move the recommendation that I can't talk today, that the Council of the Town River approve the updated 2019-2023 strategic plan as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Bouchard. Any questions? All in favor? I need one more.
All in favor?
Thank you.
All in favor.
Okay, motion carries. Item number 12, I'm looking for a motion to go in camera. Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? There we go. Thank you. Motion carries. We are now, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. What are we at time-wise? 8:09. So let's meet back at 8:15.
Mayor Jamieson, do you want your swearing in before they go in camera?
Oh, yeah, I don't have it here. I'm in my wrong one. Do you want to read it?
I don't have it in front of me, but it was, do solemnly swear and affirm that you are in a room alone and nobody can overhear you while in camera?
Councillor Anderson?
I swear.
Deputy Mayor?
I swear.
Councillor Willows?
I swear.
Counselor Grunewagen,
I swear.
Counselor Chambers,
I swear.
thank you. Counselor Dufert, *6, Linda.
I swear, your worship. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, guys.